So in a recent interview on IFL, Tyson Fury said that the fight with Usyk, should it get made, will be the fight of the century. So what makes for the fight of the century? And is he right? Let's delve.
This fight is the fight of the century.
Boxing.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. So let's talk about the fight of the century, or the fights of the century that Tyson Fury was referring to in this interview. Now, the first fight he was speaking about was the rematch between Jack Dempsey and the fighting Marine Gene Tunney. The first fight was surrounded in controversy, and Jack Dempsey actually ended up retiring after that. Then back by popular demand and the public wanting to see a rematch, the rematch occurred and it got a tremendous amount of buzz behind it. It was like it did record sales.
By fight time, the gate had amounted to over $2,600,000. Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney squared off in Chicago's Soldier Field in one of the most controversial fights in boxing history.
At the gate, the fighters got paid handsomely, and then you had the controversy with the long count. Obviously, if you don't know about that history, Gene Tunney got dropped.
Dempsey lands a potent right-hand counter, follows up with a series of 7 devastating punches. Tunney goes down for the first time in his career. Dempsey stays near the fallen fighter, but referee Dave Barry points for Jack to move to a neutral corner. Only then does he begin the count.
And Jack Dempsey didn't go to a neutral corner, and then the ref, which is a rule as well, which I've never quite understood, to be honest with you, because it doesn't. How can that affect when a boxer's getting up or not? I've always found that a strange rule, but nonetheless, it is part of the rules, and the count ended up being something like 14 seconds, and there was all this controversy, which made it today the talking point while we're talking about it. Why Tyson Fury brought it up? Why I'm doing the video now? So clearly, controversy post-fight or during the fight, but talking about it after the fight is a factor. It has to be, because, like I said, we're talking about it now. But the second fight, Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, was billed the fight of the century, so that always helps. But the lead up to that fight,
hundreds of millions are seeing this bout around the world. A packed house at Madison Square Garden.
The storylines: Ali coming out of jail, been incarcerated for fighting the system and didn't want to go to the Vietnam War, lost his license, came back, fought twice, and then the fight of the century happened at Madison Square Garden, and I'll get onto that in a minute. But the actual fight itself was amazing. It was an absolutely brutal fight.
All right, this is the final round of the fight, and what a fight it's been.
15 and final round. Referee Arthur McCanny has them touch gloves, something they've been doing all night.
And very iconic, the left hook that Joe Frazier knocked Ali down with is one of the more iconic punches in boxing. The fact that Ali lost his first fight, the bad blood between those two guys leading up to the fight.
This is the day, man. You understand? You're not fighting Glory. You're not fighting Oscar Bonavena. You're not fighting Sonny Liston. You fighting Joe Frazier.
Everybody knows that's not the point.
That's the point.
But then carry on after, Joe Frazier had a tremendous amount of animosity towards Ali, and Ali was brutal towards Joe Frazier, and so when you do have like beef, a real beef, that always plays a huge part in it, and it did in that fight. And the fight obviously lived up to expectations. So, and look, I don't mind Tyson Fury saying these things about hyping up a fight. He's supposed to do that. The trouble is, because he has had so many contradictions in the last, particularly the last year or two. It's he's not going to fool as many people if he's trying to do that. I think he generally thinks it could be, and I don't disagree with him, because of basically, if you've got the heavyweight division is always going to be a candidate for that, right? You've got the Undisputed title, you've got 2 undefeated champions, okay? So those three things, it's an automatic candidate. It has to be. Now we don't know what other fights are going to happen. We don't know the landscape. Of course we don't. But for what we know now, I'd say it's an immediate candidate. It has to be. It's the biggest title in boxing. You're the baddest man on the planet, really. If you're the undisputed heavyweight king, yeah. Will the fight have controversy? Now we obviously don't know this, but it could do, and that would automatically push it higher up or give it a better chance of being the fight of the century, just based off of controversy. Whether it be scorecards, whether it be anything can happen in a boxing ring. I mean, we've seen that over the years, and that is the saying: anything can happen. When you got two like fully trained heavyweight fighters throwing hands at each other's faces, anything can happen inside that squared circle. So that's another factor. Now back to Madison Square Garden, like where the fight is for me can play a part. And Madison Square Garden, especially at that time, was the most iconic boxing arena. Probably still is today. I've actually made a small documentary on it. If you're interested, I'll leave the link up here. But that has seen so many historic fights. I think that played a part in it as well. And just being in New York City at that time in the 70s, just an unbelievable time for press, for worldwide coverage, and just for the fight itself. I think that definitely helped. And so where would the fight be? If the fight is in Saudi Arabia, for me that takes a little sting off of it, because it's a fairly new, place to be doing boxing. It doesn't have the history, of course it doesn't. And they're solely putting it there for money, which I've got no issues with. If the fighters are trying to earn as much money as they can, I've got no issues with that. Would I rather see it in the UK? Yeah, I would. And I think it would lead and make for a better fight in terms of atmosphere and in terms of, Tyson Fury's hometown. Usyk's got his Road Warrior tradition to hold up. So that all adds into it, and I think it makes for an interesting point that Tyson Fury, made, because it could well be the fight of the century. People aren't probably going to want to hear that, because I know stylistically the two guys, it could make for a complicated fight. It could be very technical, it could be very tactical, and it could be non-purists would look at that and think this is boring. But I quite enjoy fights like that to a degree. And then we'd see what Fury does, whether he's going to, stick to the boxing or drop the boxing and try and massacre Usyk. But like I said, it really could depend on what happens on the night with how the fight goes. Let me know what you think. What constitutes a fight of the century for you? Do they have to be heavyweights? I think they probably do. I mean, unless you got two fighters that have broken records and are undefeated and stuff like that. It could happen in lower weights, but being the undisputed heavyweight championship fight, I think it's an automatic candidate. It has to be. So I get what he's saying. I think though, with the two ingredients of the two guys, given that Usyk doesn't really have to do much beefing, Tyson Fury needs a sparring partner for that, really, in my opinion. If you look at like the Mayweather-McGregor fight, obviously it was not a pure boxing match, but the press conference that they had and the media tour that they had and the back and forth sparring and the energy and just they fake beefed it really, but it was they did a tremendous job, and that added and wasn't one of the reasons why that catapulted it into one of the most grossed, highest pay-per-view watch of all time. And that can play a huge part in it. And I can't see there'll be a big media push, but will Tyson Fury and Usyk be able to generate that kind of interest from the casuals? Maybe. I don't want to see any gimmicks though. I don't want to see Fury showing up in Batman suits and stuff like that. It's got to be organic, and I don't sense that there's an organic beef between these two guys. I don't think there is. So, but we'll see. Hopefully the fight gets made, you know what I mean? That will be the most important thing, and then we'll just let the fight see where it takes the history books. But for me, that is it. For me, And I hope you guys have a good week. Let me know your thoughts on the fight of the century. All right, I'm out of here. Boxing on the Edge.
This fight is the fight of the century.
This fight sets the record that may never be broken.
Neither one has ever fought a fighter of the caliber of the opponent tonight.